You cannot, and I'm willing to bet my right nut because I already bet my left nut, but you cannot make a bad beat with the chord progression that I'm about to show you. Yay. My beautiful folks, what is up and how are you doing? This is Valentine the Plug straight from the Danger Room. And with the chord progression, y'all heard in the preview, the 651 chord progression, I'm going to show y'all how I made a dope beat around that chord progression, one that you can easily make. But you can just take the MIDIs in the video description and make do with that. Let's go into FL. Alright, so boom, welcome back into FL Studio, beautiful folks, and it's a beautiful day to break down a beat. You can see at the highlighted note right here, I'm starting in the key of G minor. That's the key that we're rocking with. Chords that I'm rocking with: 6th degree, 5th degree, 1st degree, an augmented chord, and a diminished chord based on our 7th degree. So basically, I'm rocking with a D sharp major 7, goes down to a D dominant 7 chord, rocks with a G minor 7 chord with the root note up top, paste to that baby. I'm rocking with a G augmented chord, and I'm rocking with an F diminished 7 chord to get a nice tension-filled closing stretch to my phrase. Now these chords basically repeat themselves, however at the end you can see I pasted the root notes of these two chords, put them on top so that you get a nice dope voicing at the ending. That's basically my chord progression. I've mentioned the 651 chord progression a lot, but I haven't talked about it a lot, and that's because, well, I never got the chance really. But what makes this chord progression so cool is, especially if you look at these two notes, all of the notes basically are just a half step lower from each other, because the 6th degree and the 5th degree in the minor scale are just a half step apart. So here you can see this is basically a half step, this is just a half step, this is just a half step, this is a whole step, but still there's so much tension in these notes because an interval like that is so tension filled it usually sounds dissonant, but you combine it in chord form and it's the sweetest thing, I really tell you. So that's what makes this chord progression so beautiful, is especially this movement right here. Now, something that you need to know, some people might opt to go for a regular -7 chord, and you can do that, but I feel that if you use a diminished 7 chord, it sounds a lot more R&B. It's a lot more, it really summons different kinds of emotions. I'm gonna play 651 for y'all with a -7 and a dominant 7 so y'all can hear the difference. And now with the dominant 7 chord. Now that 651 chord progression with a dominant 7, it's something that you hear a lot in those typical quintessential, almost vanilla, almost boring, even late night R&B kind of beats for Bryson Tiller, Summer Walker, Janae Aiko, Queen Naija, and whoever. But it's not just a chord progression. You gotta have the proper sounds for it. So for me, it really started coming together once I went into Omnisphere and I took out the liquid tones, which is in the keyboards folder. And this is how I got that sound. Hold on. And that's when I knew, yo, let's go and start building. So after that, I opened an instance of Contact. I took out the cassette mallets library by the Fauna Loop, which you can cop because they're amazing, especially if you're into lo-fi sounds. I basically copy and pasted the chords because that's basically how I layer. I just copy paste my chords, and I turned on the reverse button, and that got me this. I really loved it. It was something super super dope, super ethereal, and that's what I needed for that. That's what I needed for this sound. While we're continuing on the trend of that super typical quintessential late night R&B beat that everybody has made once or has based their entire brand on, this bass is something that you're always gonna hear. And I just want y'all to know this bass is super easy to make. You just take any analog synth that you have or any synth with waveforms. You take out a saw waveform, and that's basically it. You're almost halfway. And what you need to do, and I use Monarchs from Native Instruments because that's, you know, an emulation of a mini Moog, I think. Basically, you need to play around with the cutoff. Basically, filter out a lot of the brightness, a lot of the harmonics, so that it kind of gets a kind of springy and bouncy feeling. That's really what you need to do. Now I supplemented that, because you can see I got two bass patterns. I supplemented that with another bass, quintessential of course, which is the growler Moog bass, which people will usually use in like the hook or something like that. So if we do a roundup and we also account for a dope vocal sample that I got off of Splice, this is what we're rocking with right now. And I want y'all to know, having a good chord progression is basically halfway. I'd say even like 3/4 of the beat. So I was in need of a drum beat to accommodate the fact that I had a smooth chord progression. So I set my tempo at 120 BPM, which is, you know, what I consider the typical late night vibe kind of. Well, there isn't really a typical tempo, but that's the tempo that I flock to usually. Now this is the drum beat that I had, and this is a good basis, but it needed some spicing up, which I'm gonna get to in a few. I would be justified in leaving it like that, but I wanted it to have a little more bounce. So that's where I started adding all kinds of perks in between, because there was so much space in between the kick and the snare. You know, the hi-hat was doing its thing, but I needed some more details. I needed some more bounce. So that's when I added all of these cool perks, which has it sounding like this right now. And if you're wondering where I got these from, I basically got them from Prod by Jack's kits. You know, Jack, also a good R&B producer, has been on that grind for a long while now. Shout outs to you for providing this amazing kit. So I had these perks, and then I started adding this dope little drum loop. So we have the bounce in place, we have the chord progression in place, and at this point all we really gotta do is basically unmute everything, and this is what the beat sounds like right now, with that dope 6-5-1 chord progression layered properly with some keys, with some pads, with some vocal samples, and a dope drum beat to match. Beautiful folks, please believe me when I say that I'm not capping or I'm not trying to be clickbaity. Well, I mean, this is YouTube, of course I'm trying to be clickbaity, but I'm not capping when I say that it's hard to make a bad beat with this chord progression, because this chord progression has everything. It has tension, it has a typical R&B feel, it has endless possibilities for you. So this chord progression, along with 1-4-5, 2-5-1, and 4-5-6 in major, is one of the chord progressions you absolutely need to have in your toolkit if you're making R&B. And with that being said, please check out the MIDI link in the video description so you can take this chord progression and flip it into something of your own, or learn to understand it on a deeper level. With that being said, beautiful folks, I hope y'all enjoyed this short and sweet breakdown, and I hope to see y'all in the next video. Y'all be easy. Peace.